How did you get out?
I shot my way out.
Now, you don't have to be a movie buff to appreciate a captivating story, or to enjoy the depths of an immersive character. But perhaps you aren't the kind of person who's all that into movies to begin with.
Take this best.
Either way, chances are you, and most everyone around you, have definitely heard of the name, Quentin Tarantino. Being one of the most celebrated directors of our pop culture today, a master of dialogue, and with his now 9 iconic movies that's captured the eye of the critics and the moviegoers all around the world, he has had an insane amount of impact on our cinematic history. His style of cinematography can only ever be described one way: Tarantino Esque.
Screaming peace, cause they fear when my squad face them. Take them to places, take the face, then erase them and break them, murder them. Out of waiting, the quicken and base. Blast me, but never ask me to live a life.
Which now is an official entry in the Oxford English Dictionary. So what is it that actually makes Quentin Tarantino so unique? The common consensus would refer to his snappy and sharp dialogue.
What country you from? What ain't no country I ever heard of? They speak English and what?
His somewhat stylized but brutal violence, and his non-linear storylines. And while it's true that it's very much the Tarantino genre, it's not all that is to it. A story in a film is made up with characters that have a specific goal in mind, and these characters are given conflicting interest so as to build towards a narrative that leads to an ending with suspense. Suspense is a powerful tool to bring your plot forward. However, doing this too often, or carelessly, gives the story away, or simply brings you out of the moment. The key here is to reveal just enough material so as to keep the audience on a constant intrigue and wanting more. Not only does Quentin do this masterfully, but he does it using an element of cinematography that strongly glues the audience to the screen. A conflict. Nothing holds suspense better than a conflict. It's a freezing, captivating feeling that is immensely hard to master on the big screen. The script has, like the characters in a story, a need to build itself up over time, and to do so in such a way as to ferment the story with a rising suspense. Now, Quentin also tends to build the suspense over a very long period of time, as to increase the intensity of the scene and to successfully grab the viewer's attention and want to end that very conflict. Because the conflict has to be uncomfortable, and we as an audience strongly empathize for that feeling, wanting to put an end to it, wanting to release that built-up tension. When a script has that cinematic power as to rebuild and force such strong emotions, when images, videos, and sound editing comes together, it really brings out and expresses the tone of the movie and the characters. It pulls you inside, leaving you there captivated and immersed.
You know, one of the things about cinema that I just find very moving, it's why it's my favorite art form, is and there's a lot of things, people have much different aesthetics about what it is that they like about cinema. To me, what gets me is when you go to a movie and you see a certain sequence, and if there is real cinematic power and their cinematic flair, there are certain filmmakers out there that you feel were touched by God to make movies. And it'll be a combination of editing and sound, and usually it's like visual images connected with music or something. But when those things work and they really connect, and you know, an example could be the final gunfight sequence in the Good, and the Bad, and the Ugly. Like a sequence I can't ever imagine topping. That's like the one sequence I can't ever imagine doing anything that good. It's just like you forget to breathe. You are really transported to a different place, and music doesn't quite do that on its own, and novels don't quite do it, and a painting doesn't quite do it. They do it their way, but in cinema, especially if you're in a theater and you're sharing the experience with a bunch of other people, so it's this mass thing going on. It's just truly thrilling.
Now, building suspense might sound easy, but is in practice extremely hard with everything else to consider. Take one of the most, if not arguably the most tension-filled scene available today, the opening interrogation of Inglourious Basterds. The interrogation scene is the introduction to the character of Hans Landa.
Plaisir de vous rencontrer, Monsieur Lapadite. Je suis le colonel SS Hans Landa.
A character who is centered to the plot of the movie. The scene is spread out across 20 minutes of Act 1 and is at very first glance a simple dialogue and a checkup between the colonel and the farmer regarding a runaway Jewish family.
Heard about the Dreyfuses, Monsieur Lapadite?
Only rumors.
I love rumors. Facts can be so misleading. Were rumors true or false are often revealing. So, Monsieur Lapadite, what rumors have you heard regarding the Dreyfuses?
That is until we as an audience find out that the farmer have hidden their supposedly escaped Jewish neighbors under the floorboards of their house. The scene continues swapping dialogue in between the men, but now capturing more of the power dynamic between the two with simple dynamic camera angles. This showing Lapadite in an isolated view when he's asked to answer Landa's questions, and Tarantino's standard duo character shot when the pressure is no longer as high. As the scene progresses and Hans Landa reveals his intentions, the camera angles reflect the feeling of being cornered and unable to escape. The camera then matches the built-up tension in the scene, slowly dollying the camera forward, making the background disappear and causing the audience to feel trapped, helpless.
I might add also that any information that makes a performance of my duty easier will not be met with punishment. Actually, quite the contrary. It will be met with reward. And that reward will be your family will cease to be harassed in any way by the German military during the rest of our occupation of your country. You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not?
Yes.
You're sheltering them underneath your floorboards, aren't you?
Yes.
Point out to me the areas where they're hiding.
The conflict is now reaching its most uncomfortable point. The tension is not released, and Lapadite surrenders to Landa, and the rest of the scene leaves a horrible taste in your mouth.
Since I haven't heard any disturbance, I assume while they're listening they don't speak English.
Yes.
I'm going to switch back to French now, and I want you to follow my masquerade set clear.
Yes.
Monsieur Lapadite, je vous remercie pour le nez et pour votre hospitalité. Il me semble que nous en avons terminé. Ah, mesdames, je vous remercie pour le temps que vous m'avez consacré. Je ne lui rends pas votre famille plus longtemps. Donc, monsieur, mesdemoiselles, je prends congé de vous et je vous dis adieu.
Landa's character has now been introduced to the story. Not only does a great writer have to have great dialogue, but being too generous and revealing with the dialogue can sometimes be counterproductive. Subtext and withholding certain information is another something that Tarantino specializes in, and is really only the act of withholding certain information while at the same time giving the audience subtle clues of the plot or the inner thinkings of the characters of the film. Now, Quentin's style of subtext and withholding of information presents the viewer with their own perspective of what really goes on behind the dialogue, and what might give you a glimpse to what is happening next. Take for example the scene introducing Hans Landa to the bastards in the same movie. We as the audience are aware of the fact that Landa's very intelligent, very devious, and suspicious over the bar massacre that had happened before the cinema premiere. Either with or without hindsight, we are aware of the fact that while he's greeting von Hammersmark and the bastards, he's well aware of who they are and what their intentions are. But there is another rather comedic aspect to the scene, one that might not look to push the narrative forward, but very much does, and gives the viewer a slight hint of what Landa's intentions are. While introducing the undercover bastards as her Italian, non-German speaking cameramen, Landa asks all three of them to repeat their names individually. This gives way to a hilarious scene where the bastards try to pronounce their names in an Italian accent.
Come si chiama lei?
Antonio Margareti.
Landa continues to ask them all to repeat their names over and over, as to make fun or give the men a lesson in the correct pronunciation.
Margareti.
Even so far as to tap one of them on the shoulder in an approving good job.
Dominic de Coco. Bravo. Bravo.
Ich glaube, meine Kamerafreunde müssen ihre Plätze finden.
Lasciatemi vedere I vostri biglietti.
At a very first glance, the scene looks very innocent. It gives the impression that he's only ever trying to be playful, but very much acts as a foreshadowing for his plans to make a deal with the American government, and moreover, casually hints to the bastards, in a very psychotic jesting manner, that he knows who they are, and that he's their friend.
Nope.
Another quick example can be found in the very same movie, during the bar scene where the bastards are contacting Hammersmark. In this scene, Lieutenant Archie Hickox, a German-speaking British soldier of the bastards, has raised suspicion over his German accent, and Major Hellstrom makes his way over to inquire.
Mich vielleicht erkundigen.
The tension of the scene slowly dies down, and Hellstrom invites himself over. After a long period of playing Who Am I with the bastards, the tension increases once again.
Also, wer ist der Nächste? Sturmbannführer. Ich fürchte.
Hellstrom is politely asked to leave,
Stören.
but doesn't budge.
Bitte um Nachsicht, Hauptsturmführer. Wie ist es, Fräulein von Hammersmark? Störe ich Sie? Nein. Das habe ich mir nämlich gedacht.
Tension is now very high, but is released by Hellstrom finally playing off as a joke. He then offers the men a round of scotch before he's ready to leave, and we as an audience feel relieved, but Tarantino is simply playing with us. The camera work that has been reflecting the tension so far is now over Hickox's shoulder, behind his raised hand as he signals the bartender to bring 3 new glasses to the table. Notice the camera lingering on Hellstrom, even after Hickox's hand is lowered. Something is wrong.
3 Gläser.
What follows is a long, outdrawn awkwardness that hangs over the bar. An awkwardness that leads to a confrontation between the two, which in turn leads to a classic Tarantino slaughterhouse.
Stiglitz. Say auf Wiedersehen to your Nazi boss.
Now we as an audience find out later that Hellstrom had discovered Hickox was a spy simply by his hand gesture when calling out for the bartender.
3 glasses. We order 3 glasses. That's the German 3.
Something that really isn't very obvious at a first viewing. But at the same time, certainly isn't something that's impossible to figure out. Subtle signs like this and subtext that is used in a movie gives it a kind of an underlying realism, and furthermore builds on your own anticipation to want to understand where and how the story was shaped. Quentin's style of subtext is that of a master, and his skills in writing dialogue is without question. And like a famous saying, "We stand on the shoulders of giants," very clearly holds true in his case. Quentin's movies are very known for their homages, or as controversy puts it, stolen cinema. In several of his works, we find a lot of these homages to other movies, and can clearly see a pattern influencing his directing style. Now, there's certainly more to what makes up Quentin Tarantino. The question is, how will his directing change and adapt, and what can we come to expect next?